This is my Smith & Wesson Model 2944 Magnum. In its date, it was said to be the world's most powerful handgun. While that's no longer true today, it is still a formidable weapon. And so much so that a number of folks use this for self-defense, for their home defense weapon. And that is the topic of today's PAC-T test. PAC-T is precision, accuracy, consistency, and terminal performance. We're going to get precision and accuracy from that target right there. 5 shots fired from 15 yards. We're also going to get consistency using my lab radar chronograph, looking at the consistency of the muzzle velocities, and then 1 round into clear ballistic gelatin, 20% NATO block. And the specific round that I'm using is the Corbon 240 grain jacketed hollow point. I selected that round because it looks like that could be a really good choice for personal defense or home defense with a gun like this. Let's go ahead and get started. 5 rounds. Corbon Hunter 240 grain 44 Magnum. As you can see, folks, it's got a little bit more recoil than my 9mm and 45 ACP. Also of interest, if you've watched some of our other videos, we had a terrible time getting muzzle velocities on some of these bullets, these fast little bullets from Liberty Ammo. Got some really fast 9mm bullets, but this one, not a problem at all. Well, did I fire 5 shots or 6? Obviously, that's 5. Time for the terminal ballistics test. Now I just need to let the crew get this thing set up, have a little lunch. What the heck? Now I know what you're thinking. Is this bullet going to pass clean through the gel block and overpenetrate? Or is it going to stop nicely and get a really high score? Well, want to take a guess?
I got to know.
You got it. Just let me get my earmuffs on. Well, if you guessed that it was going to go clean through the first gel block and into the second, you got it right. There it is. Looks like a nice mushroom on that. Deadly mushroom. We're probably at about 22 inches of total penetration, maybe 21 3/4. We'll get the exact measurement, pull this bullet out, look at weight retention, expansion, and ultimately score it for terminal performance. Let's dig in to the results and recap for this Corbon Hunter 44 Magnum. You know, we've got an awful lot of data that we collected out there in the field, and I'm happy that more or less everything went pretty darn well. One problem you probably noticed, not a big problem, is that my slow-mo camera on the gel block itself was a little bit off-centered. I did catch the full thing. I did catch the stop as I was expecting it. I guessed that that bullet would pass clean through that first gel block and into the second. So I wanted to catch that, but the camera angle wasn't perfect, and I didn't catch the initial first maybe 6 inches of the gel block, and so we didn't really see that, which in some ways is unfortunate as we start talking about the transient cavitation channel or temporary wound channel that was produced by that bullet, and we didn't see all of that. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But let's start and go through this kind of in a systematic order. Let's start by talking about precision and accuracy. Now our bullseye target, kind of interesting. I really couldn't see this target and where the holes were impacting, where the bullet was impacting from my position 15 yards away. And don't know if you caught it, but there was quite a bit of sun that was coming into my eyes. I could get a pretty good sight picture to fire the rounds, but I wasn't absolutely clear where these things were impacting. What was interesting is my first 3 shots impacted up here, and then after chatting with you folks a little bit and resetting everything, my next 2 shots impacted there. Thought I had the same sight picture, aiming right at that dead bullseye there. Don't know if it was me, if it was literally the sight picture I was using, those sort of things that caused that abrupt change in point of impact once I kind of reset those things, took that little break in between. I will throw that out, just kind of FYI for you. Even so, this did not shoot that bad. 2.4, that's to say about a 2.5-inch group from that 15 yards, score of 43 points, maximum 50 points, with 2 in the absolute dead bullseye right there. So I'm not terribly disappointed with this. I think I could have done better, but it's not bad, not too bad. And you probably also noticed that this handgun and this particular round, well, probably any .44 Magnum, really recoils far more than in any of my tests and any of my shooting with the 9mm, even the .45 ACP. Of course, it is stepping out at over 1,300 feet per second. So let's talk about that next. Muzzle velocities and consistency of this Corbon Hunter. The average muzzle velocity of this 5-shot group was 1,319 feet per second with a standard deviation of 20 feet per second. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. I always like to see single digits. We do get that sometimes, somewhat frequently. Even with our handgun rounds, we get it a lot with our precision rifle rounds. But 20 feet per second, that's not too bad either. Now, just as a little additional tip for you, or tidbit of information for you, a tips from the trenches, one of the things I notice when I'm firing a .44 Magnum revolver, like this one right here that I was using, the Model 29, I have another .44 Mag, the Ruger Blackhawk Vaquero, actually, Ruger Vaquero Blackhawk style revolver. And when I fire that, I feel a lot of it here in my hand. Not so much, somewhat with this one, but I feel it a lot more with that Ruger Vaquero revolver. And that's not the most pleasant feeling in the world. And so what I do, and I didn't do it for this test just because it wouldn't quite fit in with that Dirty Harry theme I was going for, but what I do when I'm shooting, in fact, later on, even when I was shooting this, I use these gloves right here. Now this is a baseball batter's glove, but the way these things are designed, they have really nice padding right here. Really nice padding right there. And boy, that little bit really does absorb that recoil that I feel on a little bit on this gun, more on that Ruger, and makes it a much more pleasant gun to shoot. Just a little FYI for you there. Well, now let's turn our attention to the terminal performance test results. As I already alluded to, my camera was not in the greatest place, but even so, when we watched especially that super slow-mo footage, we could see that energy being delivered all the way through to the full end of that first 16-inch gel block and into the second gel block. I mean, there was a fair amount of energy still being delivered into that second gel block. And we take a look here at the maximum transient cavitation channel, a max TCC, maximum size of the temporary wound channel. Just take a look at that. You can see that the entire gel block, the first gel block, has got a very large wound channel. And you can even see that expanded wound channel in the first few inches of the second gel block. Now that is a tremendous energy dump, and without a doubt, this round, the .44 Magnum, and this particular bullet, the Corbon Hunter, definitely would be devastating against a bad guy, right? But that's not the full picture, of course. So this one bullet did a great job. And of course, a person may not need more than one bullet. But there's more to this picture, or more to this question than just that. But before I get ahead of myself, let's just look at the numbers. The numbers for our terminal performance on this 240 grain Corbon Hunter bullet, 21¼ inches of total penetration. It's a little bit less than I thought it was when we were out at the range. But when I got a real careful measurement on those gel blocks, 21¼ inches. 99% of the weight of that bullet was retained. It was 237.1 grains as I pulled it out of that second gel block, assuming it started at exactly 240.0. The retained length was 0.629 of an inch. Nice long shank, which suggests that that bullet will drive straight, and we saw that. It did drive nice and straight into those gel blocks with a reasonable expansion of 138%. I like to see expansion getting much closer to 200%. We didn't see that, but at the same time, we also did not see that bullet fragmenting, and we did see it penetrating very, very well. Perhaps a little bit too well, as I would call that, again, 21 inches, something close to that being overpenetration. And the fact that there was so much energy left as it entered that second gel block suggests to me that it was overpenetrating and does have sufficient energy on that outside to do some more damage. Overall, the score of this particular bullet was 287.5 points. I like to see a good self-defense bullet scoring into the 400 range. This one didn't do it. And why didn't it do it? Well, number one was the overpenetration. The scoring mechanism for our PAC-T test really rewards bullets for penetrating most of the way through that first gel block, but not all the way through the first gel block. So we're looking for about a 12 to 14 inch penetration range in this 20% NATO gel block. Now I also calculate a couple additional metrics whenever I'm doing this analysis. I don't always talk about them, but one of those is I calculate what's called the HITS index. Hornady developed the HITS index, if I remember correctly. There's also a relative stopping power, RSP, and a total wound mass index that's also calculated. Now, those three numbers are kind of off the charts when comparing this particular bullet with all my other .45 ACP, all my other 9mm, all my other handgun rounds. This thing surpassed and beat every one of those in hits, relative stopping power, and total wound mass indices. It did not do that well in some of our other self-defense related indexes, like the scoring mechanism, that FBI protocol that I talked about earlier. So I think that this particular round, and probably the .44 Magnum in general, is still a good, viable hunting round. Might be good for hogs, might be good for some smaller game. I don't know. I'm really a person who uses rifles for my hunting, but I could see that this could be a good round for hunting, smaller to medium size, even medium size big game. As a self-defense round, home defense round, it's good. It certainly did the trick. It did overpenetrate, but here's the second thing to think about. That recoil makes it very, very difficult to deliver firepower. Now, firepower is not, remember, it is not how much energy is being delivered by that one bullet. It is the total amount of energy, the total amount of power being delivered by, in this case, the full cylinder, or by a full magazine in a 9mm or whatever it happens to be. Because of that recoil, there is a fair amount of time required to get that gun back down on target and then deliver that second, that third, that fourth as necessary. You might say, well, with that sort of gun, you only need one round. Well, that might be one round per person, but what if you're not dealing with just one person? That's also something to think about. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video on testing the .44 Magnum 240 grain Corbon hunter bullet. I had a little bit of fun making this video with the Dirty Harry kind of influences and little tidbits thrown in here and there. I hope you enjoyed that too. If you've got any questions or ideas for a future PAC-T test, pop that into the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.